Rome fell, but not all of it burned. Where the West crumbled, the East endured. Byzantium rose, not in conquest, but in continuity. 1,000 years of fire, faith, and fragile brilliance. This is the story of Byzantium, the empire that kept memory alive. The darkness of Rome never disappeared, it just changed shape and lived on. When the Western Roman Empire collapsed in fire and blood, its emperors dethroned, its cities sacked, its legions broken. To the outside world, Rome had fallen. History had turned the page, and yet it hadn't. To the east, behind formidable walls and shimmering domes, a city stood defiant, alive, breathing, evolving. A city once called Byzantium, then Constantinople, now the beating heart of a forgotten empire that refused to die. How did the so-called Eastern leftovers of a broken empire rise to become a fortress of power, culture, and faith for over 1,000 years? How did a people surrounded by enemies, Persians, Arabs, Bulgars, Crusaders, manage not just to endure, but to thrive? And how did a city forged by Roman ambition and baptized in Christian fire come to shine with such blinding brilliance that it lit the medieval world for centuries? This is not just a story of emperors and battles. It is the story of an empire reborn from ashes, a phoenix cloaked in purple, crowned beneath the golden dome of Hagia Sophia, where mosaics whispered of heaven and streets echoed with the chants of divine liturgy and the thunder of imperial ambition. This is the rise and zenith of the Byzantine Empire, a tale where survival becomes legacy, where ruins give birth to glory, and where a lost Rome found its second soul. Are you ready to witness the empire that refused to fall? The Roman Empire, vast, powerful, eternal, or so it seemed. By the late 3rd century, that illusion had begun to crack. Plague, economic collapse, and waves of invading tribes battered the empire's borders. Civil wars turned provinces into battlegrounds, emperors into casualties. The machine of Rome groaned under the weight of its own size. And so came a fateful decision. In the year 285 AD, Emperor Diocletian split the Roman Empire into two halves, west and east, each with its own ruler, capital, and army. What began as a temporary measure to restore order would become a permanent fracture. The West, Rome, Gaul, Hispania, clung to the old heartlands of empire. But it was the East, Greece, Asia Minor, Egypt, that inherited the wealth, the trade, the deep reservoirs of culture and spiritual vigor. Its capital, a small but strategic city on the Bosphorus Strait, reborn by Constantine the Great in 330 AD and christened Constantinople. When Rome itself fell in 476 AD, sacked by barbarian kings and abandoned by its own armies, the Western Empire collapsed into 1,000 warring fragments. The eternal city became a relic, but Constantinople stood firm. It wasn't supposed to survive, not when the world around it was crumbling, not when Goths surged from the north and Persian swords gleamed in the east, not when ancient roads fell silent and emperors died faster than coins could be struck in their names. And yet it endured. Why? Because the East adapted. While the West clung to fading Roman glory, the East transformed it. Bureaucracy grew more efficient. Military strategy evolved. Walls were reinforced. Culture embraced a strange fusion of Roman law, Greek intellect, and Christian faith. The empire began to speak Greek, pray in Greek, think in Greek, but it still called itself Roman. This was not nostalgia. This was survival. From its throne in Constantinople, the Eastern Roman Empire, what we now call Byzantium, declared itself the true heir of Caesar and Augustus. And in many ways, it was. Its emperors wore purple not just as a symbol of royalty, but of sacred duty. Its churches became cathedrals of memory. Its scholars preserved the knowledge of antiquity while the West forgot how to read. Out of the ashes of old Rome, something new was forming, not a shadow, but a flame. The Byzantines didn't rebuild the Roman Empire. They reimagined it, and in doing so, they outlived it by nearly 1,000 years. They were survivors in a collapsing world, guardians of a legacy no one else remembered how to protect. And though storms would come, wars, betrayals, sieges, and schisms, Constantinople would shine like a beacon through the chaos, a defiant echo of a world thought lost. This was their beginning. It began with a vision. In 330 AD, Emperor Constantine I stood on the edge of the Bosporus, gazing out across the straits where Europe kissed Asia. What he saw was more than land or water. It was destiny. Here he would lay the foundation for a new Rome, a Christian Rome, one that would not just echo the past, but reshape the future. He called it Nova Roma, New Rome, but history would remember it as Constantinople. Under Constantine, the seed of Byzantium took root. He laid out grand avenues, commissioned churches, and declared Christianity the empire's guiding light. It was a gamble to merge Roman imperial might with Christian spiritual fervor, but it was a gamble that redefined an age. Yet it would take more than vision to make an empire endure. When Theodosius the Great died in 395 AD, the Roman world was split in two permanently. The Western Empire would collapse into chaos, but the East held the line. Behind massive Theodosian walls, Constantinople stood as an unshakable bastion. Plague, invasion, heresy, and rebellion battered its gates, but it endured because of leadership, because of faith, and because of one man who would take the Byzantine dream and forge it in steel and stone, Justinian the Great. Rising from humble origins, Justinian was no ordinary emperor. He was an architect of order, a sculptor of statecraft, and a warrior of law. His ambition was nothing short of restoring the Roman Empire, and he almost did. Under his rule in the 6th century, Byzantine legions, led by the legendary general Belisarius, reclaimed vast territories. North Africa from the Vandals, Italy from the Ostrogoths, and parts of Spain. For a brief golden moment, it seemed Rome had been reborn. But Justinian's greatest legacy wasn't drawn with swords. It was carved in marble and enshrined in law. The Hagia Sophia, completed in just 5 years, rose like a celestial vision. Its massive dome floated as if suspended by divine will. Gold mosaics caught the light like stars trapped in stone. It wasn't just a church, it was a declaration. Byzantium was the center of the Christian world. And then there was the Corpus Juris Civilis, Justinian's codification of Roman law. More than legal reform, it was a statement of continuity. that Byzantium was not a successor but Rome itself, alive in a new form. Trade flourished. Silk from China, spices from India, furs from the north, all converged at Constantinople's bustling ports. Art, theology, science, and diplomacy all found new life under the golden crescent of the Byzantine sun. Justinian I, the genius who rebuilt Rome, or a paranoid who wasted too many lives on an impossible dream. It was an empire that didn't just survive the fall, it outlived it and turned survival into supremacy. But behind the grandeur was constant vigilance. Enemies pressed from all sides: Sassanid Persians, Slavs, Huns, and later Arab caliphates. And within, religious schisms threatened to fracture unity. Yet the empire adapted, reinvented, reforged. Byzantium was not static. It was alive, resilient, intelligent, and unyielding. Every reform, every wall, every treaty, every cathedral was another brick in the defense of a legacy that had once seemed lost. From Constantine's dream to Justinian's glory, the Byzantine Empire rose, not as a relic of Rome, but as a phoenix wearing Roman laurels, robed in Christian faith and armed with imperial discipline. It wasn't just surviving anymore, it was soaring. The year was 527 AD. As the torch of Rome flickered across the western provinces, a different flame blazed to life in the east. Brighter, more refined, and destined to reach heights the old empire could only dream of. It was the dawn of a new reign, and at its center stood a man of fierce intellect, relentless ambition, and divine conviction. Justinian I. He was not born to power. He came from the Balkan hinterlands, the nephew of an illiterate soldier who rose through the ranks to wear the imperial purple. But Justinian was something else entirely. Where others saw survival, he saw restoration, not just of borders, but of identity, of Rome itself. In his vision, Constantinople would not merely be the capital of a surviving empire. It would be the beating heart of a resurrected civilization. And so he began. The streets of Constantinople soon thundered with the sound of hammers, chisels, and the endless chant of ambition. Hagia Sophia, the Church of Holy Wisdom, rose like a phoenix from the ashes of a riot-torn city. Its dome, vast, floating, seemingly suspended by heaven itself, became a symbol not just of architectural mastery, but of the divine sanction Justinian claimed for his rule. When he entered the completed basilica, golden light pouring through alabaster windows, he is said to have whispered, "Solomon, I have surpassed you."